All right, Tiffany, thanks for doing this. I guess the first question is really an open one. Tell us why you're running. Why are you running against a longtime senator in Washington State?
Look, I'm running to bring common sense solutions to the table for the families of Washington State, to be a unifier who can bring people together and solve the real issues that are facing us on the ground level. I think after everything we've all experienced over this last year, it's true that we need leaders, not politicians, to take us into the future. And I'm a mom. I'm a mom to three young boys, one in junior high, two in grade school. I'm also a small business owner. So I've felt the pain from this last year. And not only that, our family has sacrificed greatly for this country. I'm also a military spouse who had to stand up for my husband when he was blinded in Iraq by a suicide car bomb. And through our small business, it gave me the time and the resources to be able to advocate and make things right that were wrong for our veterans and for their families. And so when I was looking at this race, I thought, we need more common sense. We need leaders to stand up because our children's future depends on it.
You're a first time candidate, but you have had dealings, as you just noted, in D.C. With Veterans Affairs. Is that what got you interested in making a political run? Just dealing with Veterans Affairs and helping the situation with your husband?
Yeah, 16 years ago this month, I was in Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. with my husband, and I had resigned from my nursing job. I'm also a nurse, have a bachelor's in science in nursing. I'd resigned from my job. I had student loan debt. I had a car payment, and my husband was completely blind and paralyzed. And if someone would have told me someday this is going to lead you into politics and standing up, I would have laughed and said that there's no way. But what I found is the power of when we come together and what we can accomplish. And that began my fight 16 years ago, not just standing up for my husband, but thousands of families like ours. And, we brought real reform. The Department of Defense is one of the largest employers in our nation. And I always say how great America is because I was able to come to them and say, can we rethink how we're treating our injured veterans and their families when they come back? And we were able to restructure that and make it better for families. And not only that, when my husband, did retire from the military after he became the first blind active duty officer to serve our country, we served a whole nother decade, moving 8 times in 10 years all over this great nation. We saw more problems within the VA system. And so taking that message all the way to the White House, not just to the White House, but to the Senate and Congress and working with secretaries, I really saw the power that each of us collectively have when we come together with common sense solutions. And so, like I said, I've seen the struggles that we've all faced. And now more than ever, we need leaders to carry us, and we need problem solvers and people who are unifying to stand up and be a voice. And so I look forward to, solving a lot of the problems that Washington families are facing, that small business owners are facing. Every day I'm talking to people on the ground and was talking with a small business owner. And one of his biggest struggles right now is just finding employment, just finding eligible people to employ. He has 24/7 gas stations that he can't keep open 24/7 anymore. And so I think we've all felt what bad policy is. 16 years ago, our family felt it, but now it's time for us to stand up and continue our service to this country and help find common sense solutions for our children's future.
As you know, Patty Murray's been in office since 1992, closing in on 30 years as a Washington State senator. What do you think she's not doing after all of these years?
Look, she has been in for 30 years. I was 11 years old when she was elected, and I would like to say that Washington State is better off, but it's just not the case. She's come to a point where she's put the other Washington ahead of Washington State. So she's focused on Washington, D.C. and propping up her leadership positions. I even think she's the chair on the education committee and still silence about our kids and the struggles that they're facing here in this state. So 30 years is too long to be in office, especially when you're not bringing the people up with you. And I look forward to creating a movement across Washington state of people who are ready to come together for real changes. A rising tide is going to lift all boats in this state. And it's clear that she has forgotten about us here in Washington state, working moms, our children, our education, small business owners, and jobs across the board.
Yeah, the Washington Post wrote an opinion piece that said you should not be discounted. That Patty Murray should not discount you as a candidate, and they specifically went through your website and noted that the colors on your website were different than what we've seen from now former President Trump. That you don't mention the party by name, you don't mention the president by name. So I guess the question is, what what kind of Republican are you based on your website?
Look, when our family served and sacrificed for this country, we sacrificed for everyone. Didn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. We stood up and served for everyone. And when I took VA reform to the White House, I was standing up for every single person. And I think, there's a lot of division in our country today. And there's a lot of politicians, Patty Murray included, who are more focused on dividing. And people are seeing it, that it is a problem and it's affecting us on the ground level. I'm about adding. We're about bringing people together and adding to come together to solve these problems. Division is not going to help our children in the future. It's not going to help our small businesses. And look, at the end of the day, I think we need to all realize that we're actually more alike than we are different. We've just been pitched a division, and we've been pitched, politicians who are there for their own personal, often agendas. And so it's time that we have leaders who selflessly serve and who are ready to stand up and be servant leaders for the state of Washington.
So, not to dwell on the point, but in Washington State at least that the former President Trump was not a popular figure according to the data, not only from the election but in the polls leading up to that. And it does seem like as we head into this next election cycle, that is going to be an issue. Are you for the policies and discussion from the former president, or are you not? So where do you stand as far as former President Trump?
Look, I worked with President Trump on policy reform for the VA, and we won. And I saw great policy enacted. I'm talking to veterans and veterans families all across the state who are saying, thank you. That directly helped me. So that's where I stand on that. I'll work with anyone to bring reform. I'll work with anyone to make life better for others, because like I said in the beginning, I know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of bad policy. So that is what I will focus on, is working together with others in this state to bring common sense solutions to the table. I think at the end of the day, if we focus on that, there's nothing that we cannot accomplish.
The last question I'll ask is just why launch a year and a half before the 2022 election? Is there a thought process behind the timing here and getting the early start?
Yes, obviously I'm a political outsider. I've never run for office before, but I also think that speaks to the power of our service to this country and servant leadership. And, I need a long runway. I want to get out and meet everyone as safely as possible here in Washington state. I want to hear the stories. I want to know how we can help, how we can create a movement, like I said, that raises everyone up. And look, the reception that we have received in just 3 short weeks has been phenomenal. I have people calling, emailing me, getting a hold of my campaign manager, wanting to volunteer, and we are crushing our fundraising goals. So I think it's clear that people are energized, they're excited, they've felt the pain of bad policy. And I think across the board, people in Washington state are realizing that you can't just throw money at these problems. That's not the issue, right? We also need to be smart fiscally about how we are spending our money, because a lot of that is going on our children's credit card debt. And I believe that the greatest national security threat to our children is the national debt. And so people are awaking to that and realizing that we have the solutions in our communities to solve these problems and raise the tide here, improve the jobs, cut back the taxes, and let's get families back to living a fulfilled American dream. I know what it's like to try to have that stripped away. Believe me, I felt that at Walter Reed Army Medical Center with mounds of debt, a broken husband who was badly injured, and no job myself. But I also know the power of being inventive and creative and working with others and coming together across the aisle. Doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, that we can come together for the greater good of others. And that is what our state needs going into 2022.
And